having pushed the horrific images of the Lockerbie disaster out of her mind for 35 years. TV host Lorraine Kelly unlocked undiagnosed PTSD when she finally returned to the stricken town. The 63-year-old daytime presenter was one of the first to arrive on the scene as a young reporter after a terrorist planted a bomb on Pan Am Flight 103, causing it to crash in Lockerbie, southwestern Scotland, on December 21, 1988. The plane exploded mid-air over the border's market town, killing all 259 people on board and 11 on the ground. Rushing to the devastation to cover as Scotland correspondent for TVAM, Lorraine saw firsthand the shocking aftermath. Since then she has experienced flashbacks and nightmares, but thought she had no right to feel traumatized. Lorraine recalls, "As we approached the town that night we had to dodge the debris that had fallen on the ground. The sky was raining hell. There were chunks of metal lying in the road. I remember getting so close to the cone that I could feel it was warm. There wasn't anybody else around. Certainly not anybody living. I don't remember any bodies. I must have seen terrible things, but I've just blanked it out. Maybe that's for the best. Somehow I've shut all of that out. I was very young and inexperienced, and this was something on the scale that even the most hardened foreign correspondent would find difficult to process." Libyan Abdelbasit Ali Mohammed al-Megrahi was later convicted of bombing the Heathrow to New York flight that evening. In an upcoming ITV documentary, Lorraine returns to Lockerbie to find out how residents coped with Europe's deadliest terror attack. As former Police Sergeant Drew Young describes his memories, Lorraine is visibly shaken. He says, "There was a man, the top of his head was missing. And a man folded in half, just lying there with his head between his ankles. A lot of folk wouldn't talk about it. The town shut down that night. The 11 Lockerbie locals were killed when 100 tons of aviation fuel in the plane's fuel tanks exploded on hitting the ground, causing a crater that destroyed more than 20 homes." A moved Lorraine says, "They were probably sitting watching telly, having a cup of tea. The kids were probably doing their homework, maybe, getting ready to go to bed, and then death came out of the sky." Close to where the fuselage landed in Lockerbie, she adds, "It's so strange because I don't remember there being any members of the emergency services here. I don't remember there being any fire brigades or police or army. But there must have been. And I'm wondering whether the reality is mixed up with the nightmares that I have. Am I remembering my nightmares or am I remembering what actually happened? I do remember vividly that smell, that aviation fuel, which even to this day, when I smell that it takes me right back here." Reading a report that estimates 73% of Lockerbie residents suffered from PTSD, Lorraine wonders about the long-term psychological effects on her. She says, "I was only there reporting on it, I didn't stay. I was able to leave and go back to my life. I don't feel I have the right to feel traumatized." But an expert explains to her that PTSD is the body's natural defense to shock and trauma, and that if she is experiencing flashbacks then she has the condition, and must stop avoiding Lockerbie in order to heal. Lorraine also admits to feelings of guilt because her Lockerbie coverage was her big break, landing her a promotion to the TV studio. Overwhelmed by the diagnosis, Lorraine says, "I've never felt able to revisit Lockerbie until now, though I had a sense of unfinished business. I was getting flashbacks and nightmares, and since going back, there have been a lot more dreams. All these years I've told myself, you don't have PTSD, "You're not entitled to have PTSD. You're not allowed to have that." But actually that's the norm. In the film, Lorraine also speaks to Colin Dorrance. At 18, Colin was the youngest police officer on duty that night. He recalls the town hall being converted into a temporary morgue and the sadness as the first victim was brought in by a farmer. Bryony Owen, also the youngest victim at 20 months, had been found in a field. Her mum Yvonne died too. Colin describes how before long, the hall was like a scene from a horror movie, with bodies taking up every square foot of floor space. Lorraine meets Peter Giesek, then a 36-year-old mechanic, who was watching television when the plane came down, scattering 60 bodies across gardens and on rooftops. 1. Draped over Peter's garden hedge, was 21-year-old student Lindsay Otnasek. Peter hangs a wreath for her in his garden every year and has visited her parents in Baltimore. He weeps, "You always remember what you've seen." Lorraine also meets René Boulanger, whose sister Nicole died on Flight 103, and Nicole's best friend Kim Wickham, who was due to fly with her but changed her plans. Nicole's story became headline news after her mother was filmed screaming in the terminal at JFK Airport. Renee says, "I turned on the television and that's when I saw my mother on the floor of the airport screaming my baby. And my dad was trying to pick her up. The most painful moment of my mother and father's life was captured and shown all over the world." While Renee later turned to alcohol and drugs to numb her pain, Kim reveals terrible survivor's guilt. Speaking from Lockerbie's Garden of Remembrance, Lorraine says, "I was here and I saw things I shouldn't have seen. But one thing has struck me is how this community has healed itself, and that's such a testament to their strength." She adds, 35 years on, to come back to this beautiful border town, where everybody's made me so welcome and trusted me to tell me their stories, that has helped me so much and given me some comfort. Follow Mirror Celebs on Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube and Threads.